This is a solo for Surf Rider by the Lively Ones. This is the final part of this series. I've done the other parts, the riff parts, in separate lessons. I'll put the links to those in the description. And again, I'm using the SONGSTERR tab, which I used for those other parts. It's a decent tab for this song. I'll put the link to that in the description as well. So you've got the entire song now, plus the tab that I'm using. Now, it's actually quite a fun solo to have a go at, to have a challenge at. The reason for that is it's not too long, it's only 8 bars, so we don't have too much memorising to do. We can actually get that bit out of the way and concentrate on playing the bits. And there's quite a few different techniques in the solo. It's not something I'd myself describe as a flashy, sort of showy solo or anything like that. But with that said, there's quite a few different guitar techniques that are really great practice in this solo, so it should be a good thing to have a go at. I'm going to have a look at those techniques as they come up. I'll try and give a brief explanation, hopefully not drag on too much about them as we go through the solo. But basically, I'm going to look at it in 2 different halves, like the first half of the solo and the second half. So I've got the first 4 bars and then the remainder of the solo. That should become quite obvious to you when you start having a go at it. So to begin with, this solo, this series has been a student request, so it's tailored particularly towards a student I'm working with. For that reason, I'll just talk about my picking. First of all, I've decided to use down picks when tackling this solo because that's what I think is going to be accessible for my student. There's a few ways you can approach it, particularly the first 4 bars. We could use different picking techniques. We could use alternate picking or economy picking even, but as I say, this is a specific request, so I want to make it something that's accessible for who I'm doing it for. Right, let's get started. The solo itself, I've got the tab in front of me, starts at bar 25, so if you look at the tab on the SONGSTERR, if you've got access to that, we're looking at bar 25. Now, the first technique that we're using is called arpeggios. That means we're going to play a chord, but we're not going to strum it, we're going to pick out the individual notes. So the solo starts with an arpeggio of so if you look at the actual tab, I'm playing notes, the 5th fret on my high E string, the 8th fret on my B string, and the 6th fret on my G string. Those are the 3 notes that I'm playing. With my fretting hand, I'm holding a chord on. I'm not trying to manoeuvre around picking the notes individually, because the feel that I want to go for is a nice continuous feel, and in keeping with the nature of the song, that's how it was played. Just as a quick point, if I was playing my own style of music, heavy metal style with a lot of distortion, I might approach arpeggios differently because they might not work so well in that way. But on this particular song, this type of music, I want to be keeping the chord in place whilst I'm playing those arpeggios. Now, the chord that I'm using, I've just the way that I'm playing that there, I don't know if you can see it, with my first finger I'm playing a little bar across my E string, my B string, my G string. It even goes up onto my D string. So I'm playing sort of half a bar chord and then using 2 more fingers to make up the other notes. The other way that I can play it is I could just play the notes as written. So going from the highest string, the E string on the guitar, I can play the 5th fret. And leave that finger on because I want to play the chord. Then my 8th fret on my B string. And then my 6th fret on my G string. So I don't have to use the bar chord method that I've just played. I can do make my own little chord up that way. The reason that I started with a bar chord is because, having played the other parts of the song, the bits before the solo, when I'm playing, coming into the solo, I'm playing an A minor, a little A minor chord down there, and then another A minor inversion up there, which involves that little bar chord. So to get into the solo, it was easier for me just to go from there, that little bar chord, into the. Use whatever works. If you struggle with the bar chord, if that's something that is still a challenge for you for now, just try and make the chord up. You can do it perfectly well without the bar, there's no problem whatsoever. The other thing to be aware of when we start bar 25 is it starts with a rest, so the timing of our notes is really important. Normally when we're starting out, we learn to play on the 1 count, so even if you're just playing a chord progression, we might go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, and always start on the 1 count. On this we're starting on the and that comes after the 1. You can see it's a little squiggly sign, it's a rest, so it means we don't play for that very first 1. We actually start playing on the and of the 1 and. So let's get our chord shape and position that we're going to play. With a count, it's going to be rest and 2. We don't play it on that first one. So rest and 2 and 3 and 4 and rest and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So when we first start, we don't want to be playing straight on the beat. We start playing on the and count. The rest of the first 2 bars, so bar 25 to 26, is fairly straightforward. Whichever chord shape you're using, either a natural chord shape or the bar chord shape, doesn't matter. Don't forget we're going to not play the rest, but then we're just going to continue playing 8th notes throughout those first 2 bars. So rest. So that's the first 2 bars of the solo. That's a quarter of it learnt already. The next 2 bars, very, very similar. We're going to have to again play an arpeggio, but it's going to be the same chord shape. So whichever way you've done it, whether you've used the bar chord or just made the little chord, doesn't matter. We're going to play that same chord shape, but we're going to play in a different position on the guitar. In this case, I'm going to move it up from position 5 to position 10. With the bar version, sounds exactly the same. So once we've learned and got used to and got control over playing that shape and picking it, the next 2 bars should be fairly easy for us to do. So all we're doing is moving the same thing to a different position on the guitar. Fairly straightforward. The thing to watch out for is when we change position, so I'm looking at the transition between bars 26 and bars 27, you can see on the tab, if you look at it, we've got a little slide. So what we're going to do is when we play our arpeggio in this position, to get up to position 10, we're starting in position 5, to get up to position 10, when we finish playing this first part, we're going to slide up like that. So that's one thing to watch out for. If you struggle with that, don't worry too much about it, just move the chord shape and play the notes as you can for now and concentrate on perhaps working that in later. It's not always simple when you're learning to use a slide as well as a chord at the same time. So into the second position, when we're up there in position 10, the rhythm changes slightly if you look at the tab. So we've moved up to the bar 27 position. So rather than playing every note like we did in the previous one, you can see that I'm picking all the notes out. When we're up here, we're not going to pick all the notes out. Have a listen to it, have a look at the tab. it is slightly different. We've got a slightly different rhythm pattern, so it's in a nutshell, when we play the some of those notes on the E string, those 10th fret notes on the E string, we're going to let those ring out a little bit more. So the first time round we're going to play a straight 1 and 2 and. Then the next time we hit that 10th fret on the E note, we're going to let it ring out. Ring, ring. So again, the chord shape's exactly the same. I'm using down picks exactly the same, but have a listen and have a look at the tab just to make sure that you're getting the timing, the rhythm right on the remainder of that arpeggio section. So that's the first half of the solo, absolutely nailed and covered. Moving on to the second half, so the next bar is bar 29. We've got a technique there called double stops, which is playing 2 notes at once. Way to imagine it is a bit like playing a power chord. I've talked about power chords before. It's like playing a power chord in a solo. That's how I'd simply explain a double stop. So what we're playing is a 13th fret on the E string and the 15th fret on the B string. So those 2 notes together as a little tiny power chord called a double stop. And that's going to be the entirety of that bar 29. So the rhythm is so 1, 2 and 3, 4 and. So I play the arpeggio bits and then come into that so you can see how it transitions in. Into the double stops. So that's all we have to do in bar 29, just make sure we've got both notes sounding nicely. Bar 30, the technique, as I say there's a lot of techniques, is hammer-ons. So we're in that same position, we're in position 13, just like the. But we're going to play straightforward 8th notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, but we're going to play some hammer-ons. You can see on the tab the hammer-ons are the notes that are connected with a little line in between them. So I'm playing 13th note, 13th fret, 15th fret on my B string, followed by 13th fret on my E string. Same again. Finish on 13th fret on my B string. So bar 30, little hammer-ons. Notice again at the end of bar 30 we've got a little rest, so we're not expecting to play an extra note there. It does stop a little bit short before we move on to the next bar. And then we're on to bar 31. Now here we've got a technique which is another new one. It's called unison bends. I haven't covered this I don't think on a video, I might have to do this at some point because it's a new thing. But basically we're playing those double stops, so the 2 notes together, just like we did previously in bar 29 when we did the. But in this bar, in 31, we're bending one of those notes as well. So we're in position 12, I'm playing my 12th fret on my E string, I'm going to play my 15th fret on my B string, but the 15th fret note, I'm going to bend that up so that it is a whole tone higher, so that note is going to match that note. So I'll bend it, what you can hear there as I bend it, you can hear it sort of gets into tune when I bend it to the right amount. That's probably something you're going to have to practice a little bit if you're not used to bending, particularly if you're not used to doing the unison bends. There's not really any way around it. You could probably just play the 15th fret one if you're really struggling, but the fact that you're playing that unison bend with 2 notes really adds to the feel of it. So instead of playing, you're getting you can hear how much it adds to the solo. But again, if you're struggling, just play the 15th fret ones on the B string and then add the other one in later when you get more comfortable doing that. So that's how we're starting off in bar 31. So 2 of those unison bends, and then followed by 4 notes, the first of which is going to be, don't forget we're on that unison bend, we're going to drop that bend down, so we're going from being in the bent string position so 1, 2, 3, 4. That's another technique again, that's called a released bend. So because we're already bent the string, we're going to come down, so it's timing wise, it's going to be 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3 and 4 and. Sounds a bit strange when you slow it down that much, so it's. But again, don't be afraid to slow it down in order to learn it. The final bar, thankfully, bar 32, we start off with a couple of normal bends. We don't need to bother about the unison bends with 2 strings, just normal bends with 1 note. So we're looking at the 14th fret on your G string, and we're going to bend that up. Again, it says full if you look at the tab. That means we're bending up a full note, which is 2 frets. So what that means is I'm starting on my 14th fret. The note that I'm aiming to bend to is 2 frets up, so I want to aim to get that note with a bend. Again, a bit of practice, a little bit of listening, make sure we're not bending it. If we bend it not enough, it's going to sound flat, just like your tuning when you're doing your tuning. That's the note we want. That's a bit flat. Bend it too much, it's going to be too sharp. So make sure we just get it in the right place to get that note. So 2 of those, and then finally 14th fret on your G string, 12th fret on your G string, and 14th fret on your D string. The final 2 bars, I'll put them together, so we've got those unison bends, bend and release, then come down a couple more notes, 2 string bends, and then 3 more notes. And then you're back into the. So a few techniques if you're having a practice out there. As I say, this is a student request, so don't blame me. It's something that's been asked for. Even if you can't master all the techniques, the fact that you've got a few different things to have a go at, just have a go at some of the different bars. If you're okay with the normal bends, that's a great technique to practice. The hammer-ons, another great technique. There's loads of stuff in there, back to the arpeggios at the start. So have a good go at it and enjoy.